If you look at the happiness of my two kids, which a lot of it probably comes from chocolate, and you travel to Ivory Coast, you can find yourself on farms amongst kids that work on those farms that sometimes find themselves on the other end of the happiness spectrum. And the bitter reality is that it both has to do with the same thing, chocolate, or in their case, cocoa beans. I'm going to tell you a little bit about this. How does the world of cocoa look? Well, cocoa grows around the equator. There's a little bit of cocoa that comes from Asia, there's a little bit of cocoa that comes from South America, where originally cocoa comes from. But the majority of all cocoa is grown on millions of little farms in Western Africa. The other end of the value chain is billions of consumers like you and I who just want to be able to eat a full bar of chocolate every single day in your life without having to feel any sense of guilt. And in the middle of that value chain, there's only a handful of companies that actually produce chocolate from cocoa beans. These are the big players like Callebaut and Cargill, and the better known brands like Mars, Nestle, Hershey's, Mondelez, and Meiji. And it's in the interest of those big chocolate firms that the price of cocoa remains low. In our opinion, that price is inhumanly low. Because how does that look? A bar of chocolate that's sold in the US for say around $5 US, no more than 12 cents actually ends up in the hands of the farmers that grow the cocoa. And to put that in perspective, the average cocoa farmer grows about 1,000 kilos of cocoa beans per year. For current cocoa price in US dollars, which is around $1.30, that means that these farmers have $1,200, $1,300 revenue per year on their cocoa. And that means that they live of not much more than, say, $50 cents per person per day, which is way below the poverty level that's stated for Ivory Coast on a bit more than $2 US. We find that value chain ridiculously unevenly divided. That is just plain wrong. So how does that look? From two countries in Western Africa, Ivory Coast and Ghana, comes more than 60% of all cocoa in the world. And that's grown on about 2.5 million farms. Now that wasn't easy for us to find out, because they don't all go to the Chamber of Commerce to enlist themselves. But Tulane University did some research there for us. It's about 2.5 million farms. And on those farms, there's 2.3 million children that work there, of which 90% work under illegal circumstances. Illegal according to the International Labour Organization, but also illegal according to local laws, which is essential to know. These kids work with heavy machinery, work with chemicals, walk around with big sharp machetes, or carry bags of cocoa beans that weigh 60 kilos per bag, which is ridiculous for kids of 5, 6, 7 years old, right? And in the very worst case, at least 30,000 children and adults, according to the latest figures of the Global Slavery Index, work under something that we call modern slavery. They're totally abused. They get trafficked, for example, from the neighboring country, Burkina Faso, under the false pretenses that we're going to educate you to become a cocoa farmer, you're going to earn some money that you'll be able to send back home. And these kids disappear in the cocoa industry. Now these are statistics. Let me introduce you to a couple of these kids in a little movie.
Je suis Kamsame Félix, j'ai 16 ans. J'ai travaillé dans une plantation de cacao de 1999 en 2003.
Je m'appelle Kamkoy Herman, j'ai 18 ans. J'ai travaillé à la plantation de cacao 1999 en 2003.
Je m'appelle Kam Touré, j'ai 18 ans. J'étais travaillé dans la plantation en 99.
Je n'étais pas payé. J'étais forcé de travailler.
J'étais forcé de travailler. Je n'avais pas la liberté pour quitter l'école.
On ne m'a pas payé. On m'a forcé de travailler.
Et puis on ne vous laisse jamais causer entre parents. Si on te voit causer avec ton parent, bon, on te tue ou bien on te mate très bien là et puis on te fait changer de compte.
C'est fini, madame?
Now what you see here at the end, or actually who you see here at the end, is Kamtoge. Come Together is asked to sign a witness statement, which I'll come back to later on. And Come Together is told that if you don't have a signature, just jot down your first name on the line and you'll be okay. But Come Together can't read or write, so he can only draw the cross down, and he's only ashamed of that. These kids are robbed of their childhood, but honestly also of their whole future. Now, if you realize that in the middle of that value chain that I talked about, there's only a handful of companies that are actually, in our opinion, responsible for the problem in the cocoa industry, you could also reason that you could easily solve that problem if it's only about a handful of companies, right? Now, in 2001, there were two American congressmen that realized the same thing. Mr. Harkin and Mr. Engel, that set up the Harkin-Engel Protocol to eradicate the worst forms of illegal child labor from the cocoa industry within 10 years' time. And the Harkin-Engel Protocol was signed by each and every one of these CEOs on behalf of their companies, but also on behalf of themselves personally. And then you think, you're there, right? But unfortunately, the Harkin-Engel Protocol was and is a so-called non-binding agreement. And non-binding agreements don't get you anywhere. And it shows because now, 18 years down the line, none of the goals in the Harkin-Engel Protocol have been achieved. So it's a complete fake. Almost halfway through the timeline of the Harkin-Engel Protocol, there was a Dutch television show called Keuringsdienst van Waarde, which is more or less the 60 Minutes of Food, so an investigative journalistic program that looks into, in blunt Dutch, the bullshit behind the reality of marketing, the reality behind the bullshit of marketing, let me put it like that. And the journalist Teun van de Keuken was shocked when he realized that almost halfway through the timeline of the Harkin-Engel Protocol, nothing had changed in the cocoa industry. Even worse, nothing had been done towards change in the cocoa industry. But Teun had an issue, because Teun is a television journalist and none of these big chocolate firms wanted to speak to him. So he couldn't make a program. So Teun came up with a smart move. Teun bought 10 different bars of different brands of chocolate of which he was sure that somewhere in the value chain there had been illegal child labor somewhere. And he put a camera on himself and he took a bite of each and every of those chocolate bars. And he called 911. And he said, I want to turn myself in as a chocolate criminal. It was quite on the other end of the line, you can imagine. Later went, why? And then said, well, according to international law, if you're aware of criminal activities in the product that you buy, you're responsible for those criminal activities. And by buying and consuming chocolate of which I know that there's forced child labor in there, I'm responsible for financing this form of modern child slavery. And that's illegal, so you have to come and arrest me. Teun still wasn't being taken seriously, so Teun hired an expensive lawyer and had a court case set up against himself. Now this was a first for the lawyer too, because normally they're asked to keep people out of prison. In this case, he was asked to get somebody into prison. After a long process, in the end, the judge said, you know, Mr. van der Keuken, morally you're completely right. But legally, I can't prosecute you. Because I can't prove the causality between the chocolate that you ate and the beans that were picked by Come Herman from the movie who was flown in as a witness in the court case. And then we realized something that still today very few people know. That if you buy a 100% certified fair trade bar of chocolate, you're not sure that there's 100% fair trade cocoa beans in that chocolate bar. Because it's like green energy. They add to the total mix of green energy, but you don't get full green energy from your wall outlet. Because all cocoa beans are thrown on a big heap called the world market, certified or not. And chocolate producers buy chocolate beans from the back end of the world market and make their chocolate, which is very convenient for those chocolate makers, because if you then ask them, is there child slavery or forced child labor in your chocolate bars, they can say, we don't know, because we don't know where the beans come from. And we thought that was weird. And if you tell a guy like Teun van der Keuken, he's already Dutch, and he's the kind of Dutch guy that gets really angry within, say, 2 or 3 minutes. If you tell him that's the way the system works, then he goes like, then screw the system. I'll change the system from within. And Teun had the first 5,000 fair trade milk chocolate bars made in an alarming color, red. That's why our milk chocolate bars is wrapped in red, by the unpronounceable brand name Tony's Chocolonely. Tony is the international name for Teun, and Chocolonely for our lonely battle in the chocolate industry. Don't worry about 80% of the Dutch people call it Tony Chocolonely, and it can be even worse. A couple of weeks ago I was introduced as Ynzo from Choco Loco. I'm like, okay, he could have done his homework a bit better, but anyway, Tony's was born in 2005, a small chocolate company, but with a huge mission to not only make our own chocolate 100% slave-free, but to make all chocolate worldwide 100% slave-free. Now, I told you we had 5,000 bars made in that day, right? And we figured we could run a company on 5,000 bars, but people really hooked up to that theme. And this is a little clip of the very first day that we launched our chocolate bars.
Ja, goedemiddag.
Goedemiddag, is het Alain de Laat?
Jawel,
Meneer de Laat, u spreekt met Teun van de Keuken uit Nederland.
jawel.
Weet u nog wie ik ben?
Ja, ik weet wie u bent.
Nou, ik heb een tijdje geleden bij u allemaal chocola gekocht, hè?
Ja,
Ja. En we zijn vanochtend begonnen met de verkoop.
ja.
En u moet eens even raden hoeveel we hebben verkocht.
Oh, 1000.
13.000.
13.000.
Ja.
Oei, dat is een probleem, hè?
Ja, dat is een probleem, ja.
So it's going really fast from day one. And we're really proud of the fact that recently we became market leader in the Netherlands, outdoing all traditional competition. But we still really believe in clinging on to that company culture of a small company too. Because a wise woman, Anita Roddick, the founder of the Body Shop, once said, if you think something small can't make a difference, try sharing a room with a mosquito. We're a mosquito in the room of the chocolate industry, constantly buzzing in the back of their ears and hopefully keeping them wide awake like proper mosquitoes should be doing. Now, how do we think we can reach that humongous goal of 100% slave-free chocolate worldwide? First of all, by creating awareness. Simply creating awareness amongst chocolate lovers about this bitter reality in the chocolate industry. Because we're convinced that when consumers and retailers simply hand in hand demand more questions, ask more questions about what they put in their shopping baskets or what they put up on their shelves, that the industry will have to start feel the pressure, will have to change their ways. How do we do this? For example, by really making our fan base, our chocolate consumers, into serious friends. And those are people that not only buy our chocolate because they like our chocolate, but they buy our chocolate and actively promote our mission, spread our mission amongst friends and family. Now, how do we do this? Well, for example, we opened a shop in the historic heart of Amsterdam, literally 2 floors down from the place where for hundreds of years cocoa beans were traded. So that's a nice little historical input for us there. And then last year we announced, you know what, let's open a factory at the outskirts of Amsterdam in the Netherlands. And we want to have 500,000 people go through the factory every year to be able to spread our mission. So how do you get 500,000 people through a factory? Who better to ask that than our own kids? So we asked our kids, Tom and Fiona said, guys, how do I get 500,000 people through our factory? They said, Dad, maybe you should have a roller coaster go through the factory. So the roller coaster is going to go through the factory and through our office, and we'll have about 30 or 40 seconds of utter attention and fear, probably even, and then we can spread our mission in our factory. Now, that's Amsterdam, but in the US, we just launched our Choco truck, which we're really proud of. Dina made that happen. Here's a little clip of our Choco truck. Second step in our strategy is that we want to show the industry that chocolate can actually be made in a different way, in a more sustainable way, in a more social way, in a better way, let's say. And how? Well, by spreading our 5-step recipe for slave-free cocoa, of which the first is to take full responsibility for your value chain. So we work with 5,500 farmers in Ghana and Ivory Coast. Why Ghana and Ivory Coast? Because the problem of forced child labor is the biggest there. And we don't want to go around the problem, we want to go head first into the problem and solve it. And why do we want full traceability in our value chain? Because then we can pay a higher price to those farmers that actually grow our cocoa beans. So on top of the farm gate price, there's a fair trade premium on top of that, which is about 20%. And on top of that, we pay about 30 to 40% extra additional Tony's premium to get these farmers towards something that we call a living income. Now you can debate for hours what a living income is. To us, it's just that you're able to have a roof over your head, feed your whole family, send your kids to school, and you're able to invest a little bit in your farm so you can replenish your trees. Why? Because when we started building these long-term relationships with these farmers, we realized that they had a very low yield from their farms. Why is that? Because they have old cocoa trees that don't produce that much fruit anymore. And we asked them, why is that? They said, well, we're not sure whether we can sell our cocoa beans next year and the year afterwards again. So we live by the day, and we told them, you know what, we'll guarantee you that when you do business with us, we'll buy your beans for 5 years ahead. And it's a unilateral approach, so they can walk away whenever they want to, but we're committed to buying their beans for 5 years ahead. And why 5 years? Because it takes about 5 years for a little sapling to become a fruit-bearing cocoa tree. And then it can actually spiral upwards and get a higher productivity from the fields, which will help them with too. And not just to improve their productivity, but sometimes we even help them diversify out of cocoa, to be less dependent on these highly fluctuating prices of cocoa and grow other stuff like cassava, mango, rubber, anything. And the last step in our strategy is that we help these farmers professionalize themselves within the cooperatives and have a stronger say towards the buyers in the middle of the value chain that I just talked about. Now the last step in our strategy is that we want to inspire other companies to blatantly copy our business model. Now we're being copied like hell in the Netherlands and abroad already. Our best-selling chocolate bar is caramel sea salt. There's not a brand in the Netherlands that doesn't have milk with caramel sea salt anymore. But then we invite these brands to not only copy the front end of our brand, but also to copy the back end of our brand. So we invite them in our office through social media, which builds up the pressure even more, to come by, have a cup of coffee, and we help them to do the same, to blatantly copy our business model. Now, for a couple of years, we've been trying to be able to prove that, and recently we were able to hit a really big landmark, at least in the Netherlands, but I think internationally as well, because Albert Heijn, the biggest retailer in the Netherlands, have now from this week onwards sourced all of the chocolate for their own brand through the same principles that we work with. So they work through the open chain platform that we opened, so all brands can hop on this. And why is this relevant? Because if you combine the volume of Albert Heijn and the volume of Tony's Chocolonely, which is both made by the biggest chocolate maker in the world, Callebaut in Belgium, then they have enough volume to actually roll out this process towards all the other brands that they produce chocolate for. And that's impressive because Callebaut makes about 50% of all the chocolate in the whole wide world. I'm really proud of that. Now, we could have become an NGO. We could have become an activist. We chose to become a commercial chocolate brand and change the system from within. Some people would call us a social enterprise, but I'm not sure about that, because on the one hand, I think it's good for us to inspire social enterprises, that you can actually be financially successful, you can become a market leader by doing good in the world. But on the other hand, we don't want to put ourselves in a niche market either. We just want to show Holland and entrepreneurship in Holland and abroad and the US that this is probably the way that entrepreneurship should look anyhow. So, okay, let's say social enterprise. And why? Because for us, financial success isn't a goal. For us, financial success is an essential mean towards a goal. And the goal for us is crystal clear, 100% slave-free chocolate worldwide. Now, we always say, crazy about chocolate, we're serious about people. Now, we're pretty damn crazy about chocolate. I mean, about 15 years ago in the Netherlands, you had 4 types of chocolate. White, milk, dark, and something with nuts sprinkled into it or something. Now we have about 23 recipes. We have pina colada in a bar. We have caramel cookies in a bar. We do the craziest stuff. And the first thing you see when you walk into our office in Amsterdam is Eva and Celine coming up with the craziest recipes every day. We don't have international taste panels, unfortunately. It's just us coming down from the office and tasting stuff. And then we say, yeah, let's launch this one as a bar. So we're pretty damn crazy about chocolate. But we're serious about people. When it comes about seriousness about people, number one, which is perhaps slightly narcissistic, we put our own team. Because we believe we can only reach that humongous goal of 100% slave-free chocolate with the most engaged, committed, inspired team you can imagine. So working at Tony's is a blast. You work your butt off, but in your contract it says you can take home as much chocolate as you can physically carry, each and every day. To get that slightly within boundaries, you get free running shoes every year, we do boot camp every week. We have, do you know what a BMI is? The body mass index? Well, we used to have a BMI bonus, and that became slightly politically incorrect. So then we changed it into maintain your BMI bonus. So that means that year you haven't grown in your BMI. But it's all about work happiness. We don't talk about job satisfaction, we talk about true work happiness. Well, number two, those farmers that we build long-term relationships with. To put things in perspective, the 5,500 farmers that we work with isn't 0.5% of the 2.5 million farms in Ghana and Ivory Coast that we still need to reach at. So we're still a drop in the ocean. On number 3, consumers. Now, if you call our central phone line, you always get to speak to Meredith, Paul, Keisha. And when they are busy, all the phones in the whole office go off at the same time. Because we think it's essential that if a consumer tries to get in touch with us, we show the respect to speak back to that person. So number 4, the people that sell our bars. So those in the Netherlands, all the retailers, in the US, I don't even know the whole list, but Whole Foods is national, etc. So number 4, our suppliers. So the people that make our chocolate, we always say we're not chocolate makers, we're impact makers. Other people make our chocolates. Callebaut makes our chocolate. The people that make our wrappers, the people that make our bars. Now, if you hear this story about how unequally divided the value chain of cocoa is, isn't it weird to realize that chocolate bars for the last decades or even centuries have always had this perfectly divided Excel spreadsheet kind of shape? And I won't slag off any competitors, but if you believe in purple cows, well, then you might put your brand name on each and every block, in case the consumer might forget halfway through the bar what brand he or she had been eating all the time. Now, we thought that was a bit weird. So there's not a single piece of market research that you can do that will tell you that it's a good idea to make the bar unequally divided. But we did, though. Because 1, we don't do too much market research, and 2, we definitely don't listen to it. We take a lot of decisions by the gut. And I gotta tell you, when we launched our unequally divided chocolate bar, we had hell to pay. Internet was exploding, our phone was ringing off the hook, our inbox was full of complaints. The most epic one was this mother that sent us an email and said, "My kids used to live in perfect harmony." And we launched this bar because there's not one single block that has the same weight as another block in our bar. There's a great, there was a study by a couple of high school kids 2 years ago that did a study how to divide a bar of Tony's the best way between 2, 3, or 4 kids. Anyway, we told that mother, you know, there's a good solution. Just give them each a full bar, perfectly divided. I gotta tell you, that was before I had kids myself. Anyway, but on a more serious note, we tried to get in touch with all of these people that had a complaint to explain to them why we had made our bars unequally divided. Because our bars tell the story of the unequally divided cocoa industry in its purest form. Our bars become a discussion piece. If you open a bar, Tony's at the dinner table or after dinner or during dinner, whatever you feel like, and there's somebody next to you that doesn't know the story of the cocoa industry, you're going to have to explain this story because they will tell you why is that thing so annoyingly unevenly divided. So our bars become a discussion piece, and why is that relevant? Because we've never done a single piece of paid media. We've never done any advertising. So that's a great inspiration for brands to show that you can become a market leader by not paying a single cent in advertising. Unfortunately for advertising people, what not too many people know is that we managed to hide the map of Western Africa in our chocolate bars, thereby showing the origin of the cocoa beans and the respect that we have for these strong farmers that we work with in Ghana and Ivory Coast. So to enlighten you slightly, if you're really good in geography, we're talking about Ivory Coast and Ghana, and then I'm hopping to the right, there's Nigeria and Cameroon, and in the middle, we had to join Togo and Benin, 2 completely independent states, but a hazelnut wouldn't fit either into the country of Togo or the country of Benin, so we had to join them into one block of chocolate. Now that is how we believe, by ourselves we can definitely make our chocolate 100% slave-free, but only together with consumers, with retailers, with politicians, with the rest of the industry can we actually make all chocolate 100% slave-free.
Het is toch het bewijs dat je wel het verschil kan maken.
Je moet ergens beginnen, je moet niet nadenken, je moet gewoon beginnen. Iedereen kan gewoon zijn eigen Tony zijn, dat is natuurlijk ook het verhaal.
Now I'm going to leave you with a wise saying by a wise man, Jean-Paul Sartre, who once said, once you know something, you cannot unknow something. And once you know something and you're aware, you're responsible. And when you're responsible, it's upon you to act upon that responsibility. So, next time you find yourself in a supermarket and you have this feeling that you had a horrible week, you need something to fix that horrible week. Or maybe you had a great week and you need something to celebrate that great week, and you find yourself in front of the chocolate shelf, or any shelf for that matter. Just realize that each and every purchase you make is a vote for the world you want to see yourself. Thank you very much.